We begin this hour with a live look at Ottawa and breaking news out of the nation's capital, the details about the plan to bring home hundreds of Canadians who are currently trapped in Wuhan, China. Janice McGregor is in our bureau in Ottawa. And Janice, we've been waiting for this kind of information. We didn't know when this airlift would be taking place, what exactly it would look like. Now we have a much clearer idea. What are the details?
Well, the big thing is the date, Heather. We now know that this plane is scheduled to be taking off early in the morning on Thursday. That's February 6th. Local time in China. And if you've ever flown from Asia before, you know that that means it will land at CFB Trenton probably sometime in the morning of Thursday, February 6th here in Canada. We know this because the people on the ground in Wuhan asking for help with their departure have just received emails from consular officials on the ground informing them of this planned departure date. They need to make their own way to the airport by 11 p.m. the night before local time. They were given letters along with this email to facilitate their travel through checkpoints because, of course, Heather, one of the things we've been monitoring in this is the fact that that city very much on lockdown. The airport closed for all intents and purposes, so it won't be easy for them to make their way there. They've been given emergency phone numbers, people they can call if they get caught up at checkpoints and have difficulties reaching there. They've been asked to be prepared for a long wait at the airport to bring things like food and water, and be prepared for a lot of health screening because, of course, the government's been very adamant it will not put sick people on the plane. And indeed, the Chinese have been clear that they will not let sick people leave this region. One of the issues, though, that we've been watching is the fact that the Chinese are also limiting the people that get on this plane. They only want Canadian citizens, people who have entered China on a valid Chinese visa, to be allowed to return back to Canada. Now, the government was working with the Chinese to resolve issues around family units. They were concerned about Canadian children being unaccompanied and not being able to return. So the Chinese have relented in that respect and agreed that if someone is a permanent resident but a guardian of that child, they can get on the flight. Our colleagues at Power and Politics spoke to Health Minister Patty Hajdu last night, and she was going over a few more of these details. Let's take a listen.
We talked to them about permanent residents, but they've been very clear with all of the countries that it cannot be Chinese nationals that travel. And in terms of traveling with minors, when we started to hear reports that there were some very young children that would not be able to come unless there was a permanent resident or a Chinese caregiver with them, we negotiated with the Chinese and have secured their assurances that that person would be able to travel.
So they will stop in Vancouver. At that point, if there's anyone who is sick, they will be taken off the plane. Everybody else will carry on to CFB Trenton. Patty Hajdu also telling host Vashi Kapelos that about 250 people, including the crew, will fit on this plane. We know that there were 280 passport holders who had requested departure assistance. If your math is good, you'll know that means that not everybody might get on the plane, but they say there are protocols to determine who gets seats. They may have some people who don't actually make it to the airport or change their minds about going, but children, the elderly, pregnant women, those sorts of people will be given priority as per sort of established practices for situations like this.
So, Janice, you've taken us through what's going to happen, then getting on the plane. We know they will be monitored by medical personnel as they fly. What happens when they get here?
Yeah, so they gave us some details at the press conference yesterday about this. CFB Trenton has a facility called the Yukon Lodge. It's a sort of a hotel type facility. Down market a little bit, not very fancy, but it does have enough rooms, it looks like, to allow each person to be kept in quarantine separate from everybody else. And they're doing this for a reason. If they do discover in the 2-week quarantine period, remember that's the incubation period for this virus, that 1 or 2 people on the flight develop symptoms, they don't want to have to keep the entire group sort of indefinitely while those symptoms are dealt with and those people recover recover. So they are going to keep people isolated once they arrive. So even if one or two develop symptoms, the rest of them could sort of be cleared within that 14-day window. That's the plan, but obviously a lot of details still being worked out, including on the ground in Trenton.